Hello everyone, Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching. I have another Monday quarterback video for you. I'm going to play this video and then I'll talk about things that are going on to better explain what's going on and talk about things that I think that are being done right and or done wrong. Without further ado, here we go.
Hello, my name is Matt Clark, and I'm the commander of the Denver Police Department's Major Crimes Division. This critical incident debriefing is intended to provide you with information regarding an officer-involved shooting that occurred near 20th Street and Larimer Street in Lower Downtown on Sunday, July 17, 2022 at approximately 1:35 a.m. You are about to see video footage of the incident and learn about other evidence and police procedures related to the case. At this time, this incident is still under investigation, including a criminal investigation into the conduct of the involved officers. This debriefing is not intended to comment upon or form opinions about the conduct of the involved officers. It is intended to provide transparency regarding the incident based upon the information we have obtained to date. The use of deadly force by a police officer demands a thorough investigation be completed. The Denver Police Department is committed to ensuring a full and timely investigation of these serious incidents. This allows the department and outside entities the ability to complete a comprehensive examination of the officer's actions to determine compliance with state statutes and department policies. The investigation of police shootings that occur in Denver are conducted by a multi-agency investigative team made up of members of the Colorado Bureau of Investigations, the Colorado State Patrol, the Denver Police Department Homicide Unit, and the Denver District Attorney's Office. All critical incident investigations are actively monitored by the Office of the Independent Monitor. Throughout this briefing, portions of body camera video and surveillance video obtained during the investigation will be shown to provide context and detail. All officers assigned to uniform patrol duties in Denver have been issued body-worn cameras. These devices are worn at chest level by patrol officers and are capable of recording both audio and video. Prior to being activated by the officer, the body-worn camera maintains a 30-second video buffer. Once the officer activates the camera, the 30-second buffer video is captured and the camera starts recording both audio and video. It is important to note that a body-worn camera captures a general perspective of what is in the camera's view. However, this footage may or may not be what the officer saw or perceived. At times, an officer's movement or hand positioning may inadvertently block the camera's view. Additionally, the camera may not capture light in the same way as an officer's eye. A word of caution: the images and information you are about to see may be disturbing. When a police officer uses force to arrest a suspect or defend against an attack, it can be graphic and difficult to watch. In addition, there may be strong language used by those shown in the video. Viewer discretion is advised. On Sunday, July 17, 2022, at approximately 1:35 a.m., uniformed Denver police officers from District 6 were conducting directed patrol in the lower downtown area to monitor the bar out crowd. The officers on these assignments assist with closing streets and providing high visibility presence in the area in an effort to prevent disturbances and physical fights. The officers also assist with vehicle and pedestrian flow and respond to serious incidents occurring in the area. On Sunday morning, officers who were near 20th Street and Larimer Street monitoring the out crowd observed a physical altercation between multiple individuals outside of the Larimer Beer Hall located in the 2000 block of Larimer Street. One of the subjects, who was later identified as 21-year-old Jordan Waddy, and an associate of Mr. Waddy's, were observed shoving and punching another person. An officer who witnessed the assault observed Mr. Waddy may have had a firearm concealed in his hoodie or waistband. This information was communicated to the other officers in the area. Officers flashed their flashlights and verbally identified themselves as police officers as they approached. The video shows Mr. Waddy briefly walking in the area before turning and walking north on Larimer Street, away from the officers. As Mr. Waddy walked towards 21st Street, he walked through a crowd of people who were gathered in front of a food truck vendor. The video shows officers did not follow Mr. Waddy through the crowd, but instead went onto Larimer Street and paralleled Mr. Waddy from there. Mr. Waddy emerged onto Larimer Street from between two parked vehicles and was contacted by officers. At this point, video shows Mr. Waddy was away from the crowd of people and there were no people in the street. The uniformed officers observed Mr. Waddy was holding his left hand in his front hoodie pocket. They gave him verbal direction to stop and show his hands. Mr. Waddy initially put his hands up, but then disregarded the officers, walking around a vehicle and back onto the sidewalk. It appeared to the officers that Mr. Waddy was working to retrieve an item from the front pocket of his hoodie with his left hand as he continued moving towards 20th Street, which was in the direction of the crowd in front of the beer hall. The video shows Mr. Waddy removed a handgun from his front hoodie pocket. When he did so, he was holding the slide of the gun in his left hand. Two officers on Larimer Street were facing Mr. Waddy from several feet away. The officers on Larimer Street were in a position that was nearly perpendicular to the front-facing side of the beer hall, which was directly behind Mr. Waddy. At one point, while Mr. Waddy was holding the firearm, the muzzle of the handgun was pointed in the direction of the officers on Larimer Street. At this time, one officer on Larimer Street fired 4 rounds at Mr. Waddy from a duty handgun, and another officer fired 2 rounds at Mr. Waddy from a duty handgun. At the same time, a third officer who followed Mr. Waddy around the vehicle and onto the sidewalk also observed him with the firearm. The officer fired 1 round when he observed the muzzle of the firearm pointing in the direction of the officers on Larimer Street. The officer on the sidewalk was aware of the people standing behind Mr. Waddy in front of the beer hall. In his statement to investigators, that officer explained he worked to obtain a clear sight picture of Mr. Waddy before firing 1 round. The officers stopped firing their weapons when they believed Mr. Waddy was no longer a threat. Here is the incident in real time. The officers began rendering aid to Mr. Waddy and immediately recognized additional people on the sidewalk who were south of the subject were also injured. In addition to Mr. Waddy, 6 people were injured, including 3 adult males and 3 adult females. We are deeply concerned that 6 individuals were injured as the officers tried to apprehend Mr. Waddy. Based upon the information we have at this time, we understand that these injuries to these individuals were directly or indirectly caused by the rounds fired by 1 or more officers. We have been in contact with and are providing all available resources and support to these individuals. Following a police shooting, any officers involved in the incident are separated and assigned to a supervisor once the situation is stabilized. Involved officers remain in the company of the assigned supervisor throughout the initial investigation of the incident. At the scene, investigators recovered a black Rock Island semi-automatic 10mm handgun. The firearm was loaded with 1 round in the chamber and 7 rounds in the magazine. The hammer on the firearm was cocked back. This was the firearm Mr. Waddy possessed. There is no evidence Mr. Waddy discharged the firearm. Through the investigation, it was determined that 3 uniformed Denver police officers fired a total of 7 rounds. At the conclusion of the investigation, the Denver District Attorney will make a determination whether any criminal charges will be filed against any of the officers. After the District Attorney renders a decision, the Denver Police Department's Internal Affairs Bureau and Conduct Review Bureau will complete an administrative review of this incident. The details of the investigation will be presented to a Use of Force Review Board, which is made up of community members and police command officers. This incident will be thoroughly reviewed by the department's Tactics Review Board. These boards will determine whether the actions of the involved Denver police officers were in compliance with the high standard.
Okay, so we'll back this up, and there's 2 general topics I guess I'll be going over. Number 1 will be more the actions, the tactics kind of stuff that is normal of all videos, and then the second kind of large topic thing that I'll go over is bars and nightclubs and the management thereof. Excuse me. So they are conducting patrols at what is presumably bar closing time. So this is something that goes on all across the world, really. Here in the U.S., all across the country, within larger towns where there are bars and nightclubs, police will routinely take a proactive approach to have officers out and about to make their presence known, to make people think twice about doing stupid shit. So, this is normal, typical police work. Now, when I talk about that second topic, the management thereof, I'm not talking just about what bars can do to manage the crowds. I'll be talking about what the fucking police need to be doing to better manage the crowd. And that's going to be a long rant. That's why I'm saving that one for last. But getting into it to the kind of beginning, this is normal stuff you see all across the country, and the world for that matter. So they're out doing their thing when old asshole over there decides to do some stupid shit. Now, what's interesting is it wasn't even the suspect with the gun who started all this. It was his little bitch ass friend that did it. So this is something to think about when you go out to bars and nightclubs. Is sometimes, well, not just sometimes, a lot of times people who go out to bars and nightclubs, there's always going to be some of those people who just, like, they don't need to be there. Like, they are the type of people that you don't need to bring out in public around alcohol, because they can't handle themselves. And Mr. Waddy and his little buddy seem to be two of those people. Now, this guy, he looks like the type of person that probably don't need to be out drinking alcohol either. I'm sure that he probably did something to offend these guys. It might have been something very light, minuscule, whatever, but he's probably still a fuckstick. And there is a saying, don't go out with stupid people at stupid places and do stupid shit. So these are stupid people. They're at a stupid place. Bars and nightclubs are generally stupid places, and they're engaging in stupid shit. So when you go out to these kind of venues, you want to choose carefully which venue you go to. And I'll talk about venues on that second topic for the management of bar crowds. But there are different types of places out there. Some have better reputations than others. Choose the place that has the better reputation, because you're less likely to be involved in stupid shenanigan bullshit like this. Now, take note that this guy right here with the bald head, he has a shirt that says staff on it. I'm going to assume that this is their security. And this is typical bar security, guys with a t-shirt on. And I'll talk more about that later on. But this guy right here, so this dude is talking to, presumably, it looks like Waddy.
Observed a
right over in here. Maybe that's him right there. It's kind of hard to tell with all the timestamp stuff right here in the middle right here, kind of obscuring faces. But this guy right here, just sucker punches him.
Physical altercation between multiple individuals. Monitoring the out crowd. Observed
there are what is called pre-assault indicators, and one thing is picking. So picking can be they're kind of picking at their pants. Sometimes you'll see people reach down to their pants and pull their pants up just a little bit. They're picking at their shirt, something like that. That's a pre-assault indicator. Looking around before they assault, that's another pre-assault indicator. Touching their face somewhere, like reaching up and rubbing their nose or grabbing their ear, or kind of like using the palm and fingers of their hand to kind of like stroke their chin or something like that. Those are pre-assault indicators, or can be pre-assault indicators for someone who's about to attack. And you actually get to see him do the picking where he reaches down and grabs his pants. And I'll replay that here a couple times.
Physical altercation between Multiple Street and Larimer Street. Monitoring the out crowd.
Right there.
Observed a physical altercation
very light,
near 20th Street and Larimer Street. Monitoring the out crowd.
Picking right
observed
there.
A physical
he reached
altercation.
Down his pants. He did a picking motion where he's trying to, looks like he's kind of pulling them up. Not a whole lot, but you can see the motion.
We're near 20th Street and Larimer Street. Monitoring the out crowd.
You can also
on
notice
Sunday
his
morning,
fists.
Officers who were near 20th Street and Larimer
His fists appeared to be clenched.
Occurring in the area. On Sunday morning, officers who were near 20th Street, incidents occurring in the area. On Sunday morning, officers who were near 20th Street and Larimer Street, monitoring the out crowd, observed a physical altercation between multiple individuals.
Then, of course, he did telegraph by drawing this shoulder back, winding up his punch, and then delivering it.
Street, monitoring the out crowd, observed a physical altercation between multiple individuals.
Now, like I said, whatever beef they've had, whatever it was probably something stupid. Wouldn't be surprised if it was over a woman. Typically how a lot of those things go on. But sometimes those pre-assault indicators can be pretty obvious, sometimes not so much. Now, that guy obviously was not looking at his attacker. He was looking at someone else and talking to someone else, and then the attacker attacked him. That is one of the concerns that you can run into when you go out to a bar or nightclub and something happens as far as a bar fight. You're not fighting one person. You're going to be fighting multiple people. There are very few people who just go out to a bar all by themselves. Especially for men, usually guys will go with at least one other guy or a group of dudes, or it could be a guy and a girl, whatever. Now, guys can show up to the bar by themselves, but they're meeting other people there. So, long story short, if you find yourself getting involved in some type of bar fight altercation, it's not just one person you're going to have to be worrying about. It's going to be multiple people. And the type of people who get involved in bar fights, they are not respectable people. They are not people with honor. They don't understand honor, and they have no concept of it. And so they will not fight one-on-one like a man. They will attack you like a pack of dogs, and they will do it unapologetically. And once you are down on the ground, there's no guarantee that they will recognize that you're down and then stop. They likely will continue assaulting you while you're on the ground, and may even go so far as to start kicking and stomping you. And even when you go unconscious, there is still no guarantee that they will stop. They may continue to keep assaulting you, and you can become very seriously physically injured and or killed from such an attack. People who, like I said, engage in that style of, I don't even call it fighting, it's just straight fucking beatdown. They don't have good lives. They really don't. They typically have nothing to lose. They are the miscreants of society. They are fucking oxygen thieves. They're a waste of space. They really are. So choose where you go very wisely. Bars and nightclubs, I've been around them for a good little bit in my earlier years, and there was always a saying that I remember when I was younger, hearing people say, "Nothing good happens after night," and in the broad view of things, that's pretty damn accurate. Now, in the moment, certain things going on, yeah, good stuff can happen after night, but stepping back and looking at it, that saying holds very true. Nothing good happens after night, and so nothing really good happens in bars.
Outside of the Larimer Beer Hall, located in the 2000...
Now, let's see, let's back this up some more.
Between multiple...
So we see these railings right here, and this looks like this is a door to the business.
Individuals outside,
and then they move this away, going that way.
The Larimer Beer Hall, located...
So we see the same railings and the door. So they've moved from here and have gone down, or going down towards this way.
In the 2000 block.
So they've moved a pretty good distance. Now, that one person, that bouncer, I think he
of Larimer Street
is the guy that you
one of the
still
subjects,
see right
who was
there.
later identified as 21-year-old Jordan Waddy, and an associate of...
Or the logo on the chest. And you can see that he's watching. He's seeing what's going on. He's monitoring this whole situation, but he's not leaving that front door area. This sidewalk is not the bar property. This sidewalk is public property. So, and this could either be under his own self-direction, or this could be from company direction. Don't be getting involved in shit on the sidewalk because it's not the company's property. That happens in a lot of places where fights occur on the sidewalk out in front of a bar, and the bar staff do nothing about it. They just let it keep going. And they do that because, they'll often cite liability reasons. They don't want to have their staff get involved in something off property that has nothing to do with their property, when in all reality, it has everything to do with their fucking property. People who were coming there to that bar got drunk and then went outside and started fighting. That bar has everything to do with it. It's not like these people just picked this random spot in the city to go have a fight at. No, they were inside that bar to begin with. Just now because they went outside doesn't mean the bar is no longer responsible for stuff. So that's pretty common. Bar staff will not go out to the sidewalk and deal with things. Now that could also, thirdly, be impacted by local police. Local police could have smacked the bouncers PP once before when they went out and got involved in stuff on the sidewalk and told them you don't need to be getting involved in stuff that's not on your property. So there's multiple reasons why they don't get involved. So just because you see security standing around, it doesn't mean they're going to get involved in anything. It doesn't mean does not mean they're going to come help you. They may very well sit there and watch as you get your ass beat, and they will not walk away from their front door to come help you. They might call police. They might yell, like, hey, y'all stop that. But there's no guarantee that they will come help you. So security in a bar is hit or miss. They can be helpful all around, or they could just be kind of useless. And in this scenario, they are a little bit useless. And even if that bouncer or that security guy did come over there and get involved, based off the image that you could see of him just wearing a t-shirt, he's not armed. So if old dude down here pulled a gun on him, he's not going to be able to do anything anyway. And that is something that I've talked about before. Unarmed security being pretty damn useless. I don't see the point in it for the most part when they're being utilized out in public and dealing with people. There's nothing they can do. They are strictly observe and report at that point. So if that bouncer had come over there to try and help that guy, and old dude pulled the gun out, the bouncer's fucked. He's not going to be able to defend himself. And if something happened on the inside of the bar, and then that guy pulled that gun, still that bouncer is fucked, and everybody inside that bar is fucked because no one's going to be able to defend themselves against the bad guy with the gun.
Mr. Waddy's were observed shoving and punching another person.
So these dudes have progressed all the way from up here down to here and are continuing to hit this guy. And this dude's not really he's not going for it. He's not turning around and attacking. He's just kind of taking those hits and moving on.
An officer who witnessed the assault observed Mr. Waddy may have had a firearm concealed in his hoodie or waistband. This information was communicated to the other officers in the area. Officers flashed their flashlights and verbally identified themselves as police officers as they approached.
Flash their flashlights. That sounds so security.
The video shows Mr. Waddy briefly walking in the area before turning and walking north on Larimer Street, away from the officers. As Mr. Waddy walked towards 21st Street, he walked through a crowd of people who were gathered in front of a food truck vendor. The video shows officers did not follow Mr. Waddy through the crowd, but instead went onto Larimer Street and paralleled Mr. Waddy from there. Mr. Waddy emerged.
So, something tells me that these two probably didn't think that the officers would be following parallel on the street. They probably just assumed that the officers were going to try and come at them through the crowd, and then they popped out through here. Otherwise, this was a totally stupid fucking move on their part to basically walk right out into the open arms of the police officers as they come around this way. I really don't think that they fathomed that the officers would just walk down the road where there was no obstructions. I think probably they were thinking those officers were coming through the crowd, and they were thinking that the crowd was going to help roadblock the officers and expedite their extraction here.
On Larimer Street from between two
He's got that fucking oh shit look on his face, like, bruh.
parked vehicles and was contacted by officers. At this point, video shows Mr. Waddy was away from the crowd of people and there were no people in the street. The uniformed officers observed Mr. Waddy was holding his left hand in his front hoodie pocket. They gave him verbal direction to stop and show his hands. Mr. Waddy initially put his hands up, but then disregarded the officers, walking around a vehicle and back onto the sidewalk. It appeared to the officers that Mr. Waddy was working to retrieve an item from the front pocket of his hoodie with his left hand as he continued moving towards 20th Street, which was in the direction of the crowd in front of the beer hall. The video shows Mr. Waddy removed a handgun from his front hoodie pocket. When he did so, he was holding the slide of the gun in his left hand. Two officers on Larimer Street were facing Mr. Waddy from several feet away. The officers on Larimer Street were in a position that was nearly perpendicular to the front-facing side of the beer hall, which was directly behind Mr. Waddy. At one point, while Mr. Waddy was holding the firearm, the muzzle of the handgun was pointed in the direction of the officers on Larimer Street.
So at this point, they have identified themselves as police officers. And it is obvious that he recognizes that they are police officers because he stopped assaulting that guy and tried to evade from these officers. And then, when they caught back up to him in the street, he again turned around and continued to evade them. So, there's no doubt that this guy knows these are police officers. No fucking doubt. There's no, well, maybe, no. Clear fucking cut right here. He knows they're police. And yet he still goes to pull his gun out. At this moment, this officer seeing this gun, it should have been right fucking then and there. No hesitation. I don't give a fuck if he is holding it by the slide. For all we know, that could just have been his poor ass attempt to draw the gun because he's so fucking retarded. He had it in his pocket or some odd shaped way. He didn't have it properly in a holster, and so it was inverted, upside down, whatever. And that was the only purchase point he can get on that gun. The minute the gun becomes visible, make some gun sounds. Clear and present threat. Deadly threat. There should have been no hesitation at all. And if at this moment, as soon as that gun was spotted and he fired, it probably would have been the best outcome for this incident, because it would not have afforded him the ability to be able to progress up the sidewalk. The angles and everything would have been best. You could see this brick wall right here. Now, obviously, from this camera angle, I can't really tell exactly all the, exact angles and everything. It could be from this angle, the way we see it. In all reality, it could be that it would go further left over here and it wouldn't be hitting this brick. I don't know. It's hard to say just from this camera angle. But it's conceivable that the rounds, if missed, would go into the brick right there. So this is the perfect time to be shooting, but they pause. And I think that was an error. I think that was a bad thing right there. The minute, like I said, it is abundantly clear that they have properly identified themselves as peace officers. And this guy is bringing a gun out. This is the green light moment. Like, it doesn't get any clearer than this. There is no confusion. Well, I don't know. No. No confusion whatsoever. He's got a fucking gun. Shoot him. Shoot him multiple fucking times. Stop the threat.
At this time, one officer on Larimer Street fired.
Now, it does happen very fast.
To the officers on Larimer Street. At this time, one officer.
So he starts to pull it up, and then he starts to sling his hand this way. So we, right now, watching this video in the comfort of our home, holding our phone or looking at our laptop, sitting on the couch, sitting in the chair, whatever, we can pause the video. We can hit rewind a few seconds.
And was pointed in the direction of the officers on Larimer.
We have these luxuries. Right there in the moment, those officers don't. They don't have those luxuries to pause. They can't pull a Zach Morris and say, time out. Doesn't fucking exist. I wish it did, but it doesn't exist. So although we can see later that it appears this guy is just trying to get rid of the gun and not get caught with it. That's my belief. He's just trying to get rid of that gun because he knows they're going to stop him and pat him down. And he knows he's not supposed to have this gun. And I'll talk about this a little bit later, about the management aspect. But, ding, 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 this guy is a convicted fucking felon. Not supposed to be owning a gun. And realistically, since he's on parole, he shouldn't even be on the fucking streets to begin with. And that, like I said, I'll talk about that kind of stuff later. But this asshole, one, shouldn't be in possession of a gun. Two, realistically, shouldn't even be there at all if he was actually serving his sentence. So he knows he's going to be stopped by the police. He knows if he gets found with a gun on him, he's going to be going away for some amount of time. So I think that this guy's just trying to get rid of the gun so he don't get caught with it. But in that moment, there's no way these officers can quickly assess something like that. No fucking possible way. The only way you could ever assess something like that is right now, like what we're doing. Pausing the video and rewinding it. In the moment, his quick actions, he's pulling a gun. The only thing to assume at that point is he intends to fucking kill. He has evaded and disobeyed all verbal instructions thus far, and he is now pulling a gun out. The only thing that you can ever assume is they intend to be a deadly physical threat, and you have to stop that.
Larimer Street. At this time,
so it happens very quick. As soon as he does that slinging motion, the officer fires.
One officer on Larimer Street fired 4 rounds on Larimer Street. At this time, one officer on Larimer Street fired.
It's very quick.
Of the officers on Larimer Street. At this time, one officer on Larimer Street fired 4 rounds at Mr. Waddy from a duty.
Okay, so we'll back this up. Now, I want you to pay attention to these people over here. There's people standing right there.
At this time, one officer on Larimer Street.
All right. You can see this guy with the black pants. Looks like maybe a red belt, or maybe he has an undershirt that is red. Black top right there.
Street fired 4 rounds at Mr.
He climbs over this barrier and goes on the other side there.
Waddy from a duty handgun.
Play that
At this time, one officer on Larimer Street fired 4 rounds at Mr. Waddy from a duty handgun. At this time, one officer on Larimer Street fired 4 rounds at Mr. Waddy from a duty.
So, what'd they say? 7 rounds fired. 1 fired 4. 1 fired 2, and then the one I think that was at the rear of the vehicle, I think he's the one who fired that 1 round. This guy I think is the one who, based off how many times you see the plume come out of the gun, he's the one who fired twice. And the one with the camera, or maybe one to the left, has fired twice. So they fired 7 rounds.
handgun, and another officer fired 2 rounds at Mr. Waddy from a duty handgun. At the same time, a third officer who followed Mr. Waddy around the vehicle and onto the sidewalk also observed him with a firearm. The officer fired 1 round when he...
So I don't think that they really gave a clear indication how many times this guy was shot. But they do talk about 3 men and 3 women in the background being injured from the officer's gunfire. I would like to know how many times he was hit, just for the sake of knowing. But there does remain the fact that there are misses that occur in police gunfights. And let me play this part, or go into what we're seeing right here, and then I'll talk about those misses.
Observed the muzzle of the firearm pointing in the direction of the officers on Larimer Street. The officer on the sidewalk was aware of the PM pointing in the direction of the firearm. The officer fired...
So this officer has a patrol light in his left hand, and he's got gun
1 round when he...
in his right hand. So dude pulls the gun, starts to throw or whatever, and this officer decides to act.
Observed the muzzle of the firearm.
And he does what he does partially what he's trained to do. He attempts to go achieve a 2-handed grip on his gun. However, he's got that flashlight in his left hand, and that is preventing him from getting a good solid 2-handed grip on his gun. Handguns are not very accurate to begin with in comparison to rifles. With handguns, you got shorter barrels, and there's only 2 points of contact that you can achieve with a handgun, unless you're resting it on a bench. So the 2 points of contact come from your dominant hand and your non-dominant hand, getting a good solid 2-handed firing grip. If your support hand has something in it, you're not getting a good solid 2-handed grip, and you're essentially firing that gun one-handed. So when it comes to firearms training, I believe, for low light training as well, I believe that shooting drills should be implemented that train you to jettison things out of your support hand that are not critical to the gunfight. Is a patrol light critical to the gunfight? Depends. In this context, no. Why? Because he has a weapon-mounted light on that gun. And with that being said, all guns should have weapon-mounted lights. Even if you work daytime, you should still have a weapon-mounted light on your gun. You don't know if you're going to be going into a building that doesn't have any windows, going into a basement, subterranean, and there's no artificial light. So he's got a weapon-mounted light on his gun. That means his patrol light is not critical anymore. He needs to jettison that from his hand. Drop it. Go to a good 2-handed grip on the gun, and get round on target. So when it comes to low light training, if you have an old flashlight that is similar, in size to your patrol light or whatever, keep those old flashlights. Turn them into training props so that they can be dropped to the ground multiple times and have no worry about it breaking, because it's just a training prop. So if you got flashlights that are broken, or you've got very old model flashlights that have essentially been replaced by newer models, take those and turn them into training props. If you want to spray paint them blue to denote them as training props, great. Wrap some blue masking tape around them, or put like the blue reflective tape on them, whatever. Do whatever you need to denote that those are training props. That way you don't get them mixed up with the good stuff. And keep those things for purposes like this. Training to drop that crap out of your hand and get a good two-handed grip on the gun. And this is also why I gripe so much when it comes to the NYPD and the LAPD videos, where they always have a portable radio in their hand without a lapel mic on it. There's been videos where they try to get a two-handed grip on the gun, and they got gun in one hand and radio in the other. They don't fucking work. You got to keep that support hand free of things, and when you go to shoot. And so when you think about the radio stuff, if you jettison the radio out of your hand and you have to move away from where you're at and get the cover, well, you might be behind cover, but that radio's not. And are you going to be coming out behind that cover to go get that damn radio? I don't know. Probably not. So that's why I firmly believe that all portable radios should have lapel mics on them. You can also incorporate into drills, holding things like clipboards and stuff like that. I've actually seen a video where someone had a clipboard and they were holding it in their hand and they had the gun in the other, and the shooting happened and they were basically just shooting one-handed while holding the damn clipboard. Keys, I've seen videos of keys in people's hands and they try to put their hands together and shoot. It doesn't really work very well. So you can get, an old set of keys that don't go to anything, or just go buy some blank keys from the hardware store and put them on a key ring or something, and spray paint them blue. I've got a couple of key sets in my training prop bag that I've spray painted blue, and those keys don't go to anything anymore. And those make good training keys so that you can have students carry those things around, and then when fight happens, they drop the damn things. And that way they get in that habit of dropping things they don't need out of their hands and getting to work with the gun.
Pointing in the direction of the officers on Larimer Street. The officer on the sidewalk was aware of the people standing behind Mr. Waddy in front of the beer hall. In his statement...
Okay, so misses in gunfights. It's a long one. Why do misses occur in gunfights with trained people? Bear with me on this. So when an agency hires a person to become a police officer, there is a time frame of stuff involved. And as far as training goes, from the day they get hired to the day they retire, they got to do training throughout their entire career. But it varies on the intensity and everything. So when a person gets hired and they get sent off to the academy, during the academy, that, in my opinion, is probably the only time they will get any real good firearms training, unless they pay out of pocket on their own to go to some commercial firearms training school, which most cops won't do that. When they go through the academy, and it depends on the state, they can get anywhere from a good solid week of firearms training, or they can get like 2 weeks of solid firearms training. And the firearms training will have them fire hundreds of rounds, go through multiple repetitions, and will also incorporate some force-on-force training, where they get the simunition guns and do reality-based training scenarios. And like I said, that can be a whole week-long event. It could be a 2-week-long event. There may even be a couple places that do 3-week trainings for firearms, and that would include all their handgun stuff, their rifle stuff, shotgun stuff. Once they leave the academy, their skill set starts to drop off. They will never be good with their firearm skills past that point. The only time they will be the fucking ninja is the very last day of their firearms training. That is the best they will ever be. Past that point, as time progresses throughout their career, their skill set will drop. And the reason why it's dropping is because they will never have that level of intense training replicated ever again throughout their career. They will never spend a whole week or 2 weeks doing firearms training and nothing but. It just won't fucking happen. It's too expensive for the agencies to do that. They can't afford the ammo, and they don't have the personnel for it. They can't take a whole shift of officers and have them go through firearms training for a whole week, a whole 8-hour day, 7 days a week, and then have other people come in and work overtime covering their shift. It just can't happen. They can't do it. So they'll never see the same level of training with firearms that they got in the academy once they leave the academy. Once they leave the academy, they have what's called qualifications at minimum once a year. And a lot of places, it is one time a year because that's all they can afford. They can't afford the ammo for every officer to do it multiple times throughout the year. Some places do twice a year, and then those overachievers who got the budget to do it, they can do it 4 times a year. They'll do it once a quarter. Qualification is not training. Sorry, Department Firearms instructors and officers. Qualification is not training at all. All qualification is a check the box type of event. Officers from the target going back to maybe 25 yards will fire anywhere between 50 to 100, 150 rounds. Depends on the agency and the state qualifications and stuff like that. But they'll start right in front of the target. They'll do some retention shooting. They'll go back to the 5 or 10 yard line. They'll do some shooting from there. They'll go back to the 15, the 20, 25, maybe even go up to 30 yards. Like I said, it all depends. And at these intervals, they will do two-handed shooting. They may do dominant hand shooting. They may do non-dominant shooting. They may go down to a knee. They may have to do so many tactical reloads, etc. And it's not necessarily timed either. It's just scored as a pass or fail. And pass or fail can be you got 70% of the rounds on target. No, they shouldn't realistically be saying you got a 100% on your shooting. You got 100%. You hit all bullseye. Like they shouldn't score it like that. It should be a pass or a fail. And the criteria for that could be something like they hit 70% of the target or 70% of the rounds hit within critical parts of the target. And even that in and of itself, where they hit out on the target, some could stipulate that it has to be within center mass for it to count as a pass, and then other places, as long as it hits the fucking silhouette of the person, it counts as a pass. So you put all the fucking rounds in the stomach and the dick and the elbow, but you never hit the heart or brain. They're like, oh yep, he hit the silhouette the required amount of times, he passes. So that really depends on the agency and the state as far as how they stipulate that requirement. So that's a qualification, and that may be done once a year, twice a year, sometimes in some places 4 times a year. There is in-service training where there is a kind of a refresher on the firearms stuff, but like I said, it will never be replicated to the level that they got at the academy. They will try to cram this refresher stuff into an hour or so during shift or something like that. Or they may have the people who need to do it on their off days, and they may put a few hours in on this refresher, going out to the range, doing the classroom stuff, going out to the range, And some may go the full block of time that they're supposed to be doing it. Others, they'll skip through some slides on the PowerPoint, like, oh, you guys seen this stuff before. And then they'll get out to the range and do the stuff. And what should be 8 hours out of the day, they do it in 4 or something like that. Not every place does that. Some places will do that. But the intensity of it, like I said, is not the same as when they go through the academy. So qualifications, the in-service training stuff, and then the force-on-force. So some agencies can afford the force-on-force guns and the non-lethal training ammunition to go with it. Others can't. They just simply cannot afford it. And so there are some agencies that never get to do the force-on-force stuff on their own until it comes around for like in-service stuff where someone from the state level can come down and host a class for them, or they can go somewhere else where it's been hosted to get those hours in. As far as, their agency doing extra stuff on their own, they're not doing it. They can't afford it. Now, there are some agencies that do this extra stuff on their own. They go above what the minimum requirements are. The state may say, these officers have to have X amount of hours of training per year, and some agencies may say, you know what, we're going to go above and beyond that, and they can do that, and that's great if they got the budget. That's awesome. But a lot of places, they just don't have the budget for that. They can't afford it. So, and even then, the ones who can afford it, it's not like they're doing a week-long event for them. I mean, they may be doing a couple hours here and there, out of a quarter or something like that. At the end of the shift, everyone stays over for an hour, 2 hours, something like that. Or people come in on their days off for a few hours to do the force-on-force stuff, go through some scenarios and keep themselves sharpened. But like I said, and I've said it multiple times, they will never replicate the intensity of the training in which they got when they was in the academy. Agencies just cannot afford it, and they logistically just cannot do it because they just don't have the manpower to be able to do that. The only time an officer can get more intense firearms training is if they pay out of pocket and use their vacation time to go to a commercial firearms school. And there are very few officers who will ever do that. When you look at the majority of the police officers out there, or you look at all the police officers out there, there are a number of police officers who've never owned a gun before. They've never shot a gun. They've never been around a gun until they became the police. There are some police officers who the only reason why they have a gun or possess a gun is because their employer gave it to them, and it's a condition of their employment to carry the fucking thing. I guarantee you there's some cops out there, if you gave them the choice, they wouldn't carry their gun. As fucked up and crazy as that sounds, that's the truth. There's some officers out there who are like that. So, firearms training starts off really good, and then the follow-on ongoing training goes on after that, but it's not the same as when they first got it. And so it's like a roller coaster. They start at the bottom, they go to the top, and then they just keep going downhill and until they get to the bottom. And these skills are perishable skills. If you went to a 2-day pistol class today and you finished it the next day, you are going to be really great with your skills on that last day. That would be the worst time for anybody to pick a fucking fight with you or pick a gunfight with you, because you're going to fucking dominate. But as the days progress after that point, and you don't practice a whole lot, or at least go to the intensity of some of the training that you did, those skills start to drop. You become a little bit more rusty, a little bit slower. a little bit less accurate over time. There are perishable skills, just like tying, like learning advanced knots and stuff like that. Learning your figure eight knots, your alpine knot, butterfly knots, and not just a regular figure eight either, but like an inline eight, a directional going left or right, a double eight, learning to do the clove hitches, do a Munter's hitch. I mean, all that stuff. Like, you could learn all that stuff in a day and retain it for, a week later or something like that. But as time goes on, if you don't practice that stuff, you lose it. You don't remember how to do it very well, or you become slower at it. Same with martial arts, hand-to-hand stuff. You can go through a good martial arts class, for a couple of days and learn some pretty cool stuff. But unless you practice that shit, it goes out the window. Some of the firearm stuff obviously stays with you, like the two-handed grip. Yeah, like you're going to retain that knowledge. But as far as your skill sets and everything, as far as being accurate with the gun, that's going to diminish. So I took a 2-day class as an advanced fighting pistol class, and that was through a tactical response. It's tactical responses advanced pistol class, and some of the drills that we were doing in that class, our shot groups got fucking amazing. And there was one drill in the class where multiple students shot at the same target, just one target. And there was, I forget how many was in that class, maybe 10 to 15 students, maybe, I can't remember. All fired at one spot on that target while moving, and it was literally the circumference of that grouping was no larger than the circumference of a Coke can, like the bottom of a Coke can. Like, you like get a Coke can wet and you set it on a table and it leaves a ring. Like, it was no bigger than that. Like, it was fucking tight. And that was from people moving and shooting. Individually, I got groupings down really tight. And that was at the tail end of that 2-day class. As days went on, the hell, that fucking group wasn't as great. That group got a little bit wider for me. And I really noticed that during the onset of COVID, when ammo became extremely scarce, and wasn't able to shoot a whole lot. And then when I did get out to finally shoot, my grouping sucked dick. Like, it was horrible. That's because I wasn't, getting out and getting some range time. So shooting skills are perishable. Now, so I've talked about the training aspect with it, and the force-on-force aspect to it to some extent. And that the intensity of it just kind of goes downhill after the academy. So there is that aspect to it. And then the amount of hours of training with just range work with live fire compared to force on force. So I think there's probably going to be more hours of range work with live guns compared to simunition stuff. And that has a play, I think, in being able to accurately put rounds on moving targets and doing so under stress. Force on force is, I think, a underrated maybe form of training. Everyone loves getting on the range and shooting guns and doing all the tactical, cool guy shit. But when you start talking about force on force, a lot of dudes kind of steer away from that. Either they're fucking afraid of being hit by the damn rounds, which, I mean, they hurt. It's not like an end of the world kind of shit, but, I mean, it hurts, and there's a reason why it hurts. You know, you learn from pain, right? You get pain penalties if you fuck up. But a lot of it, I think, has to do with some ego stuff, because you obviously understand the concept that another person has a semi-munition gun and you're going to be shooting it out with them, and they could win. And that could be a hit to someone's ego. So when it comes to commercial firearms training, you're going to find a lot of people go through shooting classes and stuff. But when it comes to the force-on-force stuff, not a whole lot of people sign up for that stuff. And that's for the people who are seeking out the training. As far as agencies putting on the training, again, it's a cost factor, and it's more labor intensive to put on force classes than it is to take people out to the range and shoot. So, all in all, there's more range stuff than what there is ammunition stuff, and I think because there's less ammunition stuff that goes on, that in and of itself lends towards why there's more misses, because people are having less stress inoculated training and less reality based training, where there are going to be multiple role players in the background, one aggressor, and multiple good guys shooting from different angles and stuff like that. If scenarios like this could be done multiple times for force on force training, spend a good solid day doing force on force drills, do it once a month, something like that, then I think that overall, for those agencies who have more chances of having officer involved shootings, you put them through more force on force stuff, I really think that the misses would go down. But like I said, that's a budget issue, and that is a labor management issue. It's very hard to do.
To investigators, that officer explained he worked to obtain a clear sight picture of Mr. Waddy before firing one round. That officer explained he worked to obtain a clear sight picture. In his statement to investigators...
Now, this could also be something to be said about red dot sights on pistols. So, red dot pistols are an emerging trend within the firearms world. More and more guns you see are having red dots put on them. And I would say that there's probably some red dot proponents out there who would say that there would probably be less missed rounds using a red dot pistol. I don't have enough trigger time with red dot guns with simunitions. I've shot some red dot guns on range, but I have not shot any red dot guns with simunitions yet, or gone through stuff. So I couldn't really say anything about whether my opinion of they would be more accurate with red dots, but I think there's probably something there, and I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. Someone does a study with red dot guns in a force-on-force class versus iron sights and see who the fuck's more accurate. Take same kind of officers, same levels and stuff, and do multiple runs and see what happens. I have a belief that probably the red dot pistols would probably fare a lot better as far as overall accuracy than the irons. Now, I'm still an iron guy. I have not transitioned over to red dot at all, so I'm not a red dot guy. I've got excess big dot sights on my Glocks. I don't have any red dots. So this is not a red dot guy trying to sell red dots or anything. But being a realist, I kind of believe that if they had red dots, that there may have been less rounds missed. Now, I've talked about before, doing a red dot video. Still haven't got around to that, but I'll be doing one.
The officer explained he worked to obtain a clear sight picture of Mr. Waddy before firing one round. The officer stopped firing the clear sight picture of Mr. Waddy before firing one round. The officer he worked to obtain a clear sight picture of Mr. Waddy.
So they shot him, I forget, there was an article couple articles I brought up, and one of them kind of detailed that he was shot in his buttocks and in his butt, or his back area. So I think that was when he was turned. Probably a round went in through the side of his ass or something like that. I don't know. But the look on his face...
Before...
he's like, that's the look of...
that officer explained he worked to obtain a clear sight picture of Mr. Waddy.
Stupid motherfucker.
Before firing one round. The officers stopped firing their weapons when they believed Mr. Waddy was no longer a threat. Here is the incident in real time. The officers began rendering aid to Mr. Waddy and immediately recognized additional people on the sidewalk who were south of the subject were also injured. Additional people on the sidewalk.
All right, so there were some people who were hit. And it's not exactly 100% clear if they were hit with full-on, fully intact projectiles or hit by bullet fragments, because there's a news article where an attorney representing people, they have some of their statements in there, and they say that they were either hit by a bullet or bullet fragments. So it's not very clear what these people were hit with, or if some of the injured people were even hit with bullets at all. Some of the injured people could have just simply turned and fell during the chaos and were trampled on by other people. They got stampede injuries. So medical care, or carrying medical equipment as a armed professional. I am a firm believer that if you carry the tools to induce trauma, you should carry the tools to reduce trauma. If you're going to carry a gun, you need to carry medical gear as well. First and foremost, for you, like, you come first, right? That's what that medical gear on you is for. It is, first intended purpose is for you. Because if you're going to be involved in a gunfight, you have to realize the fact that you're on a two-way range. Bullets can come towards you and fucking hit you. And you cannot rely on this mindset of, well, an ambulance will get there. Ambulance may be 7 minutes away. You get a femoral artery hit, you're fucking dead in 90 seconds. 90 seconds. So if it takes an ambulance 7 minutes to get there, there ain't shit they're going to do for you. Your body will be covered by a white sheet, and your body's going to lay there for a while until the crime scene investigators process shit. Like, there's no fucking helping you at that point. So that's why you got to carry some medical equipment on you. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to carry a full trauma bag on you like this dude right here is with a backpack. But you can carry some essential things to treat the leading causes of death when it comes to armed conflict. When it comes to armed conflict, TCCC is the standard that is widely used. TCCC being Tactical Combat Casualty Care. So this is stuff that originated back in, I think, the 90s, and it has really progressed since then. And it is tactics that has been revised since Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom back in 2003. I'm sorry, not 2003, 2001, when we went to go fuck the people up who fucked us up. That's really when things became a lot more concrete within the medical training. And that trickled down to domestically as well, like the use of tourniquets. So even after 2003, the use of tourniquets domestically was kind of frowned upon. It was something that wasn't taught, so to speak, in EMS as a kind of a more go-to option. It was kind of treated as a last resort kind of thing. Well, years of combat, proved otherwise. It's not to be treated as a last resort thing. It should be used right away when you notice arterial bleeding. And one of the myths about tourniquets that kind of made it a last resort thing to begin with was this idea that, you put a tourniquet on, you're probably going to lose the limb. Like, they're probably going to cut it off. Well, years of combat, years of using the tourniquet has proved that to be pretty much wrong. You can have a tourniquet on your arm for a long period of time, and you still get to keep the limb. So the medical training has really gotten good over time, and it's identified that there's some things that if you carry on you, those are the best things to carry on you because they are able to treat the leading causes of battlefield wounds. For example, a tourniquet. A tourniquet, at bare minimum, should be something that you carry on you. You get hit, like I said, in an artery in the limb, you can bleed out in 90 seconds. Now, part of the data that drives that tactic also happens to include shit like improvised explosives, landmines, people's lower limbs just being completely blown the fuck off. But the battlefield stuff also includes small arms, being shot with guns. Other things to carry in a IFAC, an individual first aid kit or improved first aid kit, a VOC, ventilated operator kit, a blowout kit, whatever term you want to call it. You got tourniquet, you've got compressed gauze that you can use to pack a wound with, a pressure bandage, so that when you put that pressure bandage on, not only are you putting a bandage over the hole, but you're able to put pressure down onto the wound using that bandage itself. Occlusive dressings to be able to put on holes on your thoracic cavity to deal with sucking chest wounds. Those are the things that you could carry on you in a really small kit that doesn't take up a whole lot of room, but can make the most monumental difference in life or death. At least until more follow-on support can get to you, or you can evac yourself or someone else out of the hot zone into a safer area where the ambulance crew can get. Because that's another problem with ambulance crews. They don't carry guns. They're not going to go directly into the hot zone where all the fucking gunfire is going. They're going to stage, just like the fire department. They're going to stage down the road until they are told the scene is safe. So you've got to be able to treat your own injuries. You cannot rely on the ambulance to get there or the fire truck to get there. It may be 7 minutes away, and even if they do get in the area, the gunfight could still be going on, and they're not coming to the gunfight. So that medical gear you carry on you, number one, is for you. Secondarily, it is for your teammates, or as an armed citizen, it is for your family. As far as everyone else is concerned, they can wait for the supplemental medical gear, the gear that is in a large med bag that is kept in a car or something like that. They get to receive that, especially bad guys. Bad guys can wait to receive supplemental gear. That gear that's on you should only be for you and your teammates or your family. Everyone else can wait for supplemental gear. And the reason I say that is because the scene can rapidly change. And if you have taken your only tourniquet and you've put it on that bad guy, and then their buddy comes around the corner and starts fucking shooting at you, and you get hit, you've just taken your one life-saving piece of equipment and put it on the bad guy. He might live, but now you're going to fucking die. What are you going to do? Go to him and take that blood-soaked tourniquet off and put it on you? No. So the only way that your medical gear gets used on anyone else as if the scene is 110% safe, meaning you've got no less than a fucking platoon of armed officers there to deal with any threats. Then that gear can be used on bad guys. If there are other victims there, then to me, those victims get priority over that bad guy. So if there's someone back there in that crowd that has a bullet hole in them, and you got medical gear, that innocent bystander gets treated first. Bad guy can wait. Fuck them. The only exception to the wait until the scene is 110% safe to use my medical gear on anyone else is if it involves small children. Like if there's a little fucking 10-year-old kid that's been injured and it's a dangerous scene and there's not a fucking platoon of cops there, I'm probably going to break that rule to help that kid. Because they're a kid, right? Like, they don't have the same opportunities as every other single fucking adult out there to go through a medical class, to get a job, to get the money to go buy their own medical gear. They don't have those opportunities. And they're a kid. They're innocent. They're not involved in... I mean, obviously if the kid was out here in the bar scene at night, that's a little bit of it, I'm going to be wondering, what the hell is this kid doing here? But generally speaking, kids are pretty damn innocent. Most kids are pretty damn innocent, and that's just kind of a no-brainer for me. Like, I'll break that rule to help a little kid out. But as far as other adults go, like, you're going to fucking wait. Like, I'm not taking my only life-saving piece of equipment and using it on you with the potential that someone else could start fighting. It's not happening. My life comes first. Other adults, you've had the same opportunities in life as me. You've had internet connection. You could have gotten online and registered to take a fucking CPR first aid class. You could have gotten that medical knowledge to learn how to save yourself. You could have bought some of this stuff to carry around on you. It's not my fault you're fucking stupid. I am selfish, as everyone else is. So my priority is me first, teammates, and then family. Well, I mean, realistically, family would, come second. But, working wise, obviously your family's not going to be with you, or shouldn't be with you when you're working. So in the working context, it's you and teammates. If you're just, off duty, if you're just, regular armed citizen or whatever, your priority is you and then your family. Everyone else can wait for supplemental gear. So let's say the bad guy did get a round off and shot one of the officers. How long would it take for the ambulance crew to get there? I don't know. It could be 5 minutes. It could be 7 minutes. It could be 3 minutes. You have to know how to treat traumatic injuries caused by gunfire and knives, at least domestically. I mean, yes, it's great to know how to treat blast injuries and stuff like that too, but I mean, as it is right now, we don't see blast injuries as, a big threat. It's guns and knives. You got to know how to treat that stuff. You have to be self-reliant. You cannot be living off this mindset of, well, the ambulance will get here. They'll take care of us. No, fuck that. You take care of yourself.
Who were south of the subject were also injured. In addition to Mr. Waddy, 6 people were injured, including 3 adult males and 3 adult females. We are deeply concerned that 6 individuals were injured as the officers tried to apprehend Mr. Waddy. Based upon the information we have at this time, we understand that these injuries to these individuals were directly or indirectly caused by the rounds fired by one or more officers. We have been in contact with and are providing all available resources and support to these individuals. Following a police shooting, any officers involved in the incident are separated and assigned to a supervisor once the situation is stabilized.
So it talked about the people being injured, and like I said, it didn't really go into specifics if they were struck by fully intact projectiles or if fragments hit them, or if they received stampede type of injuries, or they fell and got cuts or whatever. An article that I found from ABC News, there was an attorney who is representing some of these people. The attorney is Siddhartha Rathod. Willis Small IV, age 24, said in an interview that he was near the food truck when he felt a bullet or bullet fragment penetrate his left foot. Small looked down to see a hole through his shoe, hopped to his car, and drove to the hospital. I don't know how to pronounce Yekalo. It's spelled Yekalo. Last name spelled Weldehewet. Yekalo Weldehewet. I don't know. Age 26, was outside the bar after celebrating his fiance's brother's 23rd birthday when a bullet shattered a bone in his upper arm. His right arm went limp, like a noodle, he said, and he held it with his left arm as he sprinted away. Bailey Alexander, 24, who was waiting in line at the food truck with her boyfriend, said she felt blood rushing down her body after a bullet or bullet fragment went through her upper back and exited her right arm. Alexander's boyfriend held her up by the waist as they fled. So that's just 3 people mentioned in this thing as far as having bullet injuries. Now, I don't know if that's the only 3 people who had bullet injuries and then the other 3 received like stampede kind of injuries, or if these were just the only 3 that are represented by this Rathod attorney and have gone on public record. So the details are not very clear.
Involved officers remain in the company of the assigned supervisor throughout the initial investigation of the incident. At the scene, investigators recovered a black Rock Island semi-automatic 10mm handgun. The firearm was loaded with 1 round in the chamber and 7 rounds in the magazine. The hammer on the firearm was cocked back. This was the firearm Mr. Waddy possessed. There is no evidence Mr. Waddy discharged the firearm. Through the the hammer on the firearm.
So that's 10mm is a pretty nasty round. There are people who go bear hunting and they carry a 10mm pistol with them for protection if they can't get their rifle out on time to a bear that's charging at them. So when you think about people carrying a 10mm to deal with bears, I mean, like 10mm is a hell of a fucking round. Now the projectile itself is 40 caliber. It's just a longer casing that has more powder in it, so it's a lot more oomph behind it. This gun plus the ammo that you could see in this is duty grade ammo. This is Hornady. I don't know the exact style of it, but it's Hornady ammo. It's the nickel casing. So this is duty grade ammo. This is self-defense grade ammo. You typically don't see street thugs with good ammo like this. They buy cheap shit. So I have a belief that this is probably a stolen gun. Like some gun person, had this gun and they probably kept it in the car and then it got stolen. And now this shithead's walking around with it.
There's no evidence Mr. Waddy discharged the firearm. Through the investigation, it was determined that 3 uniformed Denver police officers fired at... Through the investigation, it was determined that 3 uniformed Denver police...
So this round looks like it probably missed the guy completely and hit something in the background with this wood splinter right here. I'm going to assume that this probably hit some portion of the building, and this is potentially where this splinter of wood came from, was the round hitting it. I mean, it could have gone through a person and there's no residue from the person on it, I kind of don't think that. I think this more or less hit part of the building. So, but this very, very well easily could have hit a person.
Police officers fired a total of 7 rounds.
So fun little fact. Anytime evidence is being recovered, especially if it's metallic objects, the evidence collection kits come with plastic tweezers so that no tooling marks could be left on these pieces of evidence that will be forensically reviewed later. So if you used metal tweezers, that could leave a tooling mark on this, and that could taint evidence. So, fun little fact.
At the conclusion of the investigation, the Denver District Attorney will make a determination whether any criminal charges will be filed against.
Okay. So that was the tactics kind of stuff and some random tidbit stuff. Now I want to go into that second umbrella of stuff I want to talk about. How bars and nightclubs are dangerous places, and how these places can be, I guess, handled or managed better so that overall these are not, or help overall these become less dangerous areas. All right, so let's talk about the managing of crowds at alcoholic venues. Venues that serve alcohol. So when you think about venues that serve alcohol, there are multiple kinds of venues that serve alcohol. Your traditional bar, where you have to be, at least here in the U.S., you have to be 21 years old to get in. And in most places, that means that you have to stay inside that bar with your drinks. You can't really leave the bar with them and go freely about anywhere you want. There's open container laws in most places. Some places you can go a limited distance outside the bar, but for the most part, you're kind of contained within that bar. As far as the culture, I guess you could say, or the style of bar, there's multiple different types of bars. And then outside that, you have sports bars that are kind of a hybrid of a restaurant and a bar. They operate a little bit more closer to a bar than they do just a actual just standalone restaurant. During the week, they may be more of a restaurant, or let's say during the daytime, they may actually be more like a restaurant, but at night, and especially on weekends, they may operate more in the capacity of like a traditional bar. And then you have restaurants that at all hours are a traditional restaurant, but they happen to serve alcohol. Then you have sports stadiums that can serve alcohol. You have event venues that can serve alcohol, like a convention center, places like that, like a wedding venue kind of place, have their own little liquor or alcohol license, and they can serve alcohol. And then you have just the stores that sell bottled drinks. They don't actually serve an open drink to anyone, but you can just buy a beer can that's closed and take it out of the place and take it where you want and drink it. Not so much the places that sell the bottled stuff is what I'm talking about. The places that serve the open containers is what I'll be talking about. So, of all those places, the first level of crowd management, so to speak, comes from the customers themselves. When you look at a standalone restaurant, say for example, Red Lobster, the crowd that goes to Red Lobster is a crowd that can manage itself for the most part. They don't get too wild. They don't go a little crazy or nothing. Their main focus is going to the restaurant for food. And as an added benefit, they can get an alcoholic drink with their food. These restaurants, families go into them, family outings, etc. And just the class of clientele is extremely different than the class of people who would be going to a downtown bar as a whole. Now, you may have some of the downtown bar people that would obviously go visit a Red Lobster and maybe get hammered during the day, but that's like maybe one or two people. It's not like the entire restaurant of Red Lobster people are getting fucking hammered while they're there. As a whole, it's like I said, the class of people there are there for the sole purpose of consuming food. And they may have one or two beverages with their meal. So those places, their customers are able to, for the most part, maintain the majority of the order, so to speak. Now, the restaurant itself may have to follow state laws and may also follow some of its own company policies in regards to alcoholic beverages. Of course, they will have licensed bartenders who will have to follow the state laws and guidelines, and they're not supposed to overserve people, etc., or serve it underage. And the wait staff are not supposed to be bringing drinks to underage, etc. As far as company policies and stuff go, places like I can't remember if it's Texas Roadhouse or Lone Star. One of those places. No, maybe it's Logan's. Yeah, I think it's Logan's. So Logan had it was like an LIT drink or something like that, I think. And their company policy is a customer cannot have more than two of those, because it has a lot more alcohol in it than some of their other mixed drinks. Cheddar's has one like that. They have a drink called the Painkiller, and it has a bunch of different alcohol in it, and their policy is a customer cannot order more than two of those drinks. There's no state law about it, but it's just they take it upon themselves to go that extra mile for that kind of stuff. However, even if those counter rules were not in place and they didn't have licensed bartenders and stuff like that, the crowd alone that would be going to these standalone restaurants to buy alcohol would still be able to self-manage. They're going to take care of themselves. They're not becoming belligerent drunks or anything like that. They can maintain. So those places are traditionally not problems. Not saying that there's never problems in those places, but as a whole, all across the board, they're not really an issue. As you slide across and you go to the hybrid of a sports bar, a place that is a restaurant and a bar, but operates a little bit more closer to a bar kind of theme, then that's where you can start seeing a noticeable increase in issues compared to places like Texas Roadhouse and Logan's and Applebee's and Red Lobster, places like that. Cracker Barrel. Because the clientele that goes to those places late at night are different than, say, some of the people who go there during the day during lunch hours, or the crowd that goes to a place like Red Lobster. And depending on the managerial staff and or the owners and how they run the place, these places can be good or bad in regards to the issues that come about and how they operate the places. If these places are operated by owners who are people that have a good moral compass and they want to do good and follow the rules, then they're going to run the place like that. And then they will also promote people who who share some of their same core values and will want to do good and follow rules, not problematic kind of people. And so those places can go by and not have a whole lot of issues, or even really hardly any issues at all. Some of the other places that kind of have some more questionable owners, more questionable managerial staff, they can run things a little loose and attract a really bad crowd, and their nightlife, so to speak, or night crowd can be problematic in some ways, or their weekend crowd can be kind of problematic in some ways. It really boils down to the overall managerial staff and the owners for that establishment. Bars are bars, taverns, dance halls, nightclubs, whatever terminology your area uses for them. These are the places where you have to be of a certain age to get in, and it is primarily devoted for drinking alcohol, getting drunk. These are the places that can have more problems. But just like the sports bar kind of place, those kind of places, it can also be an issue or be a thing where it's up to who the owners are and who the managers are on whether or not these places are very problematic, or if they have some minor problems with they're trying their best to make sure there's no problems. So a lot of it does boil down to who's running these places when it comes to that. The crowds that come there, depending on how the place is ran, they can attract people who can kind of self-manage in a little bit capacity, but they still kind of need to be watched because they just can't be trusted by themselves. And then kind of another style of a bar, like a nightclub. So a nightclub could be a place that has a bar or two bars inside, and the place is got a designated dancing area for people to dance at, and that's kind of what it's more known for, is more of a dance club kind of place. As far as the bars go, a simple bar could just be a shotgun style storefront within a larger set of stores within a big building that's all kind of interconnected, and it can be just a simple bar in there, maybe some tables, some pool tables in there, not really a whole lot of dancing, jukebox maybe, and people just kind of sit in there and drink and play pool. So there's kind of bars like that, and then like I said, there's the dance club kind of bars where people go in to drink and they go in there to dance. Then there's the kind of strip club kind of nightclubs where there's nude dancers and they also serve alcohol there. And as far as other kind of bars, there could be there's a biker bar. The clientele is mostly all bikers. There could be a bar where it just has a wide range of different kind of people to go into it. There could be a bar that their clientele is a more affluent kind of clientele, a bunch of managers of different businesses, business owners, attorneys, stuff like that could be going to a place, and it has a more exclusive clientele that goes there. No one else really hangs out there. Then you could have a bar that is kind of like a music venue where like local bands come to play, and that's where you go to see acoustic acts and live bands and stuff like that. Then there's the hip hop rap kind of bars. They just cater just mostly to the hip hop rap crowd. There's the country themed kind of bars. well, they'll have a live music act, like a house band or something like that. Pool tables, traditional bar, and then there's some places called they're like dive bars. Like that's just another way of kind of like describing, just a wide range of different kind of people going there. And there's bars that are more just college bars. It's just a bunch of college students that go in there. So, and then you have like a country club kind of bars, right? It's on a country club premises, and the bar itself, it's just basically the club members and their guests who go there. And then you have your private clubs like Moose Club and like, I don't know if Kiwanis and them do drinking or not, but they'll have kind of like their own little private bar that really just their members know about, and the general public don't really go in there. So the clientele of those places can kind of, again, that kind of goes into the self-managing aspect. So some of those places that are just true traditional bars in a sense, even a couple of those places can still have a crowd that can self-manage, like the one that has the more affluent kind of clientele where you got like attorneys and business owners and stuff like that going in there. They're typically not going to be causing problems, at least a whole lot of problems overall. They're kind of more of a tame crowd, so they can kind of control themselves to some extent. Same thing with the country club bars. They're not going to be, having big fucking brawls. It's not going to be, it's not like they're going to be whipping out their golf clubs and, beating the shit out of each other or anything. Although I wouldn't be surprised if that hasn't happened somewhere. But overall, it's not like, your local police are having to go out to the country club because, a couple of golfers are going at it over, some incident that occurred on hole 9 or something. I mean, it's not common. The college bars can be places that can have more problems. Some of the clientele that come there can kind of self-manage. They know not to get stupid. Usually it's your older ones who know better. The younger ones, especially the ones who are using fake IDs and stuff to get in, they can be more problematic, so to speak. They can cause a little bit more issues with just getting a little too drunk and rambunctious and even, fighting and stuff like that. The country bars, they might have some fights every once in a while, but overall it's not going to be a whole lot of problems. The bars that are more of a hip-hop rap kind of clientele, those are the ones that can have a lot of issues overall. If you go to any city and they've got a list of or a group of different kinds of bars, I can guarantee you that probably the rap hip hop ones are going to be the ones that have had the most serious kind of issues. The bars that kind of are just a mix of different kind of people. Those can be problematic because you just got so many different groups of people that may or may not jive pretty well with each other. There can be some issues there. Which ones I'm trying to remember which ones I've talked about. The strip club kind of bars, again, the clientele and each place is going to be a little bit different. Some can have a little bit more better clientele than others. Some, they just have, it's just the shady place, right? They can have a lot more questionable clientele, and they can end up having a lot more issues out of them. So, and it's really hard to say. You can't make a blanket statement and say that all strip clubs are a problem or a major problem. You can't make a blanket statement and say that all rap and hip hop bars are a major problem because that's just simply not true. Several years ago, there was a place in our town called Good Times 2, and it was predominantly a rap hip hop kind of bar. on Wednesday they had college night, and it would have a college crowd. But Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it was strictly all hip hop rap crowd, and it was a mix. And with that crowd, there is a mix of different kind of people. There were some college students. There were just some locals who, just normal, regular people. And then there were some who came across the tracks. Like they were actually from the hood, so there was like fucking drug dealers in there. There was, car salesmen that came in there. There was some, business owners that came in there, college students that came in there. So, it was a wide range of different types of people that came in there, but they all had this common theme of catering to or living that rap hip hop kind of lifestyle, and just being attracted to that music and that style. And that place, to my recollection, never had a shooting. Not once, to my knowledge, there was ever a shooting at Good Times 2. There were some fights, just typical bar fights and stuff like that, but there was no shootings, there was no stabbings, there were no people being beat to death. Across town, across the tracks, there was a place called Chocolate City, and it was a rap and hip hop kind of place. And there were shootings there. There was stabbings there. There was someone beat to death there. There were robberies there. Major assaults there. There was another place that was a little bit closer to campus, Lava Lounge. And it was a rap and hip hop kind of place. And it had some issues. And there was a shooting there. And a Western sports player, I think he played football, I'm not 100% sure. It's either football or basketball. I think one of them got shot or was shot at. And then that incident kind of ended up getting that place closed down. So, of those three rap hip hop venues, three widely different kind of owners of those places. And like I said, the Good Times 2 place, it was a very popular place. It was on weekends predominantly just all hip hop and rap. They even had Nappy Roots, of course, Nappy Roots is from my town, so they had Nappy Roots play there, 2 Chainz play there. I can't remember any of the other artists that came there, but they had some artists that came there and put on a little show. One's coming to mind. Crap, I cannot remember his name. Shit, that's going to bug the shit out of me. It's right there at the tip of my tongue. I cannot remember his name. But yeah, it had, there were lots of people that came in there, or acts that came in there. And like I said, it had a very wide range of different kind of people that came in there. There were college students that came in there. Some business owners and stuff like that came in there, and then there were some people. Pastor Troy, that's the dude's name. So rapper Pastor Troy, he came in there and sang, or rapped. I don't know if you can call it singing. But also in that crowd was the people from across the tracks, like the fucking ghetto people, like the hood rat motherfuckers, the dudes who've been in prison, the dudes who go to jail on a regular basis. They also came there. And those people were the same people who also went to those other 2 places, the Chocolate City place and the Lava place, or Lava Lounge place. And out of those 3 places, Good Times never had any issues. No shootings, no stabbings, no murders, no killings, no fucking robberies. Like, I think some cars got broke into, maybe, but like no one got held up in the parking lot. No one had a gun pulled on them out there. And the owner of that place at that time was, pretty spot on about things. A good business owner. He kind of had some issues towards the end, divorce and stuff like that. Kind of got off the beaten path, so to speak. But overall, the management of the place was good. The managers that he had in place, they were good at what they did. They did not subscribe to this, ghetto thug lifestyle or anything like that. So they didn't entertain any of that kind of bullshit going on inside. The security staff they had, same thing. They weren't into that thuggish, ghetto ass lifestyle or anything like that. I think one guy was kind of from that kind of lifestyle. He had done some prison time, but when he was working there, he wasn't, doing anything stupid like dealing dope or nothing like that. Like, he was kind of a, clean guy, I guess you could say. And the other dude, he wasn't into the stupid shit. He was a bodybuilder. So it had a good group of employees there who just were not into that thuggish lifestyle. Now, if you go to the other two places, I can't say that for sure about their employees or their owners. So, and that can have a determining factor in how the crowd is managed. So if you have people who do things the right way, there's going to be less bullshit that goes on. If you have people in charge who don't always necessarily care about doing things the right way, or have some questionable practices and stuff like that, then there can be some more issues because they just let more stuff go on. So when it comes to the establishment itself and how they manage things, at the very top you've got the owners and the managers, and then you've got the security personnel. And if they're both on the same page and both doing what they're supposed to be doing and doing things right, then overall you're most likely going to have a safe venue, or a venue that doesn't have a whole lot of stupid shit going on, or it's not known for a whole lot of stupid shit going on inside of it, or even outside of it. If both of them are not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and both of them have kind of questionable people, then that's where you're going to start running into issues. And then if you got, some where it's a mix, then there's going to be some issues there. Because if no one is on the same page, then there's going to be issues. So we got self-management from the clients themselves, and then you have the management from the establishment itself. Now, when it comes to bars, nightclubs, whatever, security is an important factor for these places. Security is going to help determine whether or not there's going to be a bunch of issues there, or if there's not going to be a bunch of issues there. It doesn't solely rest upon them. Like I said, management also has a hand in this, but overall security does have a good sized hand in it. And as far as security operations go in bars and nightclubs, I like to break that down into exterior control, entry control, and interior control. So exterior control is going to depend upon the establishment itself and its property. So if it is a business that is on its own little plot of land, it's got its own little parking lot, it doesn't share a parking lot with another business, it doesn't share sidewalk space with another building or anything like that, the exterior control for those places is a little bit more straightforward and easier to do, because it's basically like the places that are almost like an island in a sense, I guess you could say. It's like one little business, it's got its own little plot of land, and then it's like 20 yards until the next business or whatever. So the exterior control for those places, like I said, is a lot more straightforward and easier to define. With exterior control, what you should be looking at is making sure that people are not loitering in the parking lot. If you're going to a bar, then you should be in the bar, not hanging out outside in the parking lot. It's not Walmart. There's no reason to be hanging out in the parking lot. The only reason why these people are hanging out in the parking lot is to drink the alcohol that's in their vehicle, so they don't have to pay a bunch of money inside the bar, or they're wanting to do some drugs outside. If they're wanting to smoke their cigarettes, then they just need to do it at the front door of the place, within view of security that's at the front door doing entry control. Other than that, there's no reason for people to be outside. If people go outside and they go out into the parking lot towards their car, they either need to A, be grabbing cigarettes out of their car and coming back up there, or B, go into their car and leaving. Like, they don't need to be hanging out their car, sitting in their car, leaning up against cars, none of that. Like, they don't need to be hanging out in the parking lot. Like I said, you come to a bar, then you need to be inside where the people are at. That's where the entertainment's at. It's not out in the parking lot. If you want to go hang out in the parking lot, go to Walmart. Lots of people hang out in the parking lot at Walmart. Go hang out there. So exterior control helps the bar, helps them from losing profits when people are outside drinking alcohol outside. So if people are going outside drinking alcohol, then that means they're not spending money inside. That means the bartenders aren't getting tips. And if the bartenders aren't getting tips, they're not happy, because that's their income right there. The hourly wage that they get from the bar is almost nothing. It's like $1 something an hour, or maybe $2 and some cents an hour. Like, it's not a whole lot at all. Their income, their wages, their living wages come from their tips. So if people if people are not inside buying drinks, then bartenders are not getting tipped, and the bar itself is not making any money. So if they're not making any money, it's hard for them to stay open. It's hard for them to afford DJs. It's hard for them to afford bands. It's hard for them to afford good security. So, number one, for security personnel, if you're wanting to ensure job security, don't let people hang outside. You're jeopardizing your own damn job by doing that, because if the bar is not making enough money, where are they going to cut money at? They're going to cut it at security. That's the first damn thing they're going to cut. Instead of having 5 people working a night, they're going to cut it down to 4, and then they'll cut it down to 3. You can't cut DJs. If you cut the DJ, who the fuck's going to play music? If the place is known for bands, you can't cut bands. We're going to have the bar back and the bartender go up on stage and hit the drums some? It's not going to happen. So exterior control helps the bar maintain good profits, or it helps it from losing profits. It also prevents people from becoming over intoxicated. So when they go out to their car and they get their 5th of Crown Royal, or their 5th of whatever, and they start drinking from it, well, they're getting a lot of alcohol at that point. More alcohol than what the bartender would serve them. And so they drink a bunch, and they get back to that front door. Well, the effects haven't kicked in yet, so nothing seems off or different about them. They go back inside, then it starts taking effect. Now they're over intoxicated, and then that can start leading into problems. Exterior control can also keep problems from arising in the parking lot. So you got like a bunch of dudes hanging outside, having their little sausage fest over there in the corner. That can be where issues start to arise. Another group of dudes walk by, and someone says something disrespectful. There's a girl that walks by, and there's a guy with her, and catcalls start happening, and the dude takes offense to it. There's going to be problems there. People hanging out in the parking lot could be selling drugs, etc. So exterior control can prevent a lot of issues from occurring outside. It can also set the tone as well. If people are caught drinking outside, and they're told to put it away and go inside, and they start getting an attitude, well, that's a clear indicator right there that they don't need to be inside. If they're going to be outside drinking and getting disrespectful and being a dickhead, well, then they just don't need to be partying inside that night. They can go somewhere else. Entry control is where a lot of the problems can be stopped. Behavioral problems can be stopped or prevented from coming inside, I guess you could say. If someone is going to get a huge disrespectful attitude towards staff working a door, then that means they are more than likely to get a shitty ass attitude towards other customers inside the venue. And that can lead to fights. That can lead to problems. That could lead to people feeling uncomfortable and never wanting to come back to that place because it can be intimidating to some people. So there's a loss of profits there. The issue of checking IDs and stuff. So, fake IDs. I have a video on that, by the way. Go check my video on fake IDs, how to detect fake IDs, counterfeit IDs. And this is going to depend on the venue. If it's a college bar, then obviously there's going to be a shit ton of people who are underage trying to get in, right? Like it's going to be fucking nonstop. So places like that, entry control is very important for the establishment itself, because if they get caught with so much and with too many underage people inside the bar, and they get so many citations for it, the bar can lose its liquor license. So entry control for those places is super important to keep the doors open. Other things with IDs, so typically people who have expired, not everyone, but a lot of people who do have expired IDs, they're just not very responsible people. People who have absolutely no IDs at all, even if they look like they're 40 years old and they don't have an ID, but they look a little shady looking. Like, that's a clear indication that this dude is completely irresponsible, doesn't have any redeemable, responsible qualities about them. Like, if you can't manage your own life where you have an up-to-date operator's license, then there's something fucking wrong with you. And overall, I have found that people like that, you're usually the ones who have become problems. Or if they got an ID that says duplicate on it. A lot of times those people can become problems too. People who are trying to sneak in alcohol, those are problematic people. People who are trying to sneak other things in, they can be problematic. Now, talking about sneaking stuff in, so that type of entry control where you're trying to control that's going to be only at some unique instances. So not every bar searches people when they come in. The only type of searching, so to speak, that goes on in most bars is searching a person's ID or inspecting their ID. Searching their person, their bags, is typically not done in a lot of bars. Bars that have had some issues or repeated issues, they may try to institute a bag check, a pat down, or using a metal detector wand on people coming in through the door. When it comes to places that do that, those are the places where there's usually a lot of issues. If it's gotten to the point where the fucking bar is having to pat people down, then that means that there has probably been some problems, or there are no problems, and the reason why there are no problems is because they do prevent things from coming in, and they do set a really good tone. But that's all dependent on how effective they are at searching. So I have seen many different places fail when it comes to searching people for weapons. I've seen places use a metal detector wand, and all they do is scan around the waistband area. They don't go down to the ankles. They don't go up to the armpit areas or the chest. They just wand around the pocket areas and the waistband. That's completely stupid. I've seen pat downs where only the men are patted down and none of the women are patted down. Well, what do you think happens in those instances? Well, the dudes hand their guns to the women, and the women put their guns in their bras, or they put the drugs in their bras, and then that stuff makes it inside. So if you're going to have searches being conducted at your entry control, then you need to treat it like an airport. Have a table set up to where people can empty their pockets out onto that table, and then be thoroughly patted down like they're going in to an airport or going into the boarding area of an airport, or being patted down at intake in a jail. The metal detector wands, I'm not the biggest fan of. Those things ping off of anything metallic, and sometimes they'll ping even when there's nothing metallic on a person. So, and if you're not using it correctly, if you're only going down around the waistband area and the pockets, but you're not scanning anywhere else on the body, then you might as well not even be using the damn thing, because they can have a gun stuffed in their sock, or they can have a shoulder holster on, or have it up in the breast pocket of a jacket or a hoodie or something like that. Or be wearing it as a necklace. Overall, though, it's really the attitudes and everything that can be checked at that front door. People who are disrespectful don't need to be let in at all. If they got a fucking attitude, they can take that attitude somewhere else. They're not coming in. My company has been contracted at places, and that way of operating has allowed the places that I've been contracted at to have zero fucking problems. Major problems. Zero major problems. There was a place that had me contracted. It was more of a rap and hip hop place, and it was a place that opened up after the Chocolate City place had been shut down, where people have been killed and stuff. And that same crowd was coming to this place, and this place was called a hookah lounge. It's not business anymore, but same crowd came there. And there were no shootings there. No murders. No major problems. Now, there were some fights, like little fights. Nothing like, no big, huge-ass brawls or anything. But a lot of that had to do with the managing of the crowd. And probably 90% of that was checked at the front door. People come in that front door, if they popped off with a fucking attitude, they were told to fuck off and go somewhere else. People in the parking lot, if they got an attitude, they were told to fuck off and go somewhere else. Not putting up with that shit. Like I said, no major problems out of that place. The only time anything major happened was when my personnel left at the end of the night, and I was like, half an hour to an hour later, while the bar staff was cleaning up, some people came in and robbed the place. But even then, there was some speculation that that was possibly an inside job, made to look like a robbery when it really wasn't a robbery. But nothing concrete to prove anything like that. But as far as when, security personnel were there, no major problems. None. Interior control. And when that place that I was at, as far as interior control, we didn't really, I didn't really have people go in and hang out inside all night. Like, there wasn't a security person that stayed inside that thing all freaking night. They were just mostly at the front door. And so the crowd was left to manage itself for the most part inside. Why? Because all the fucking stupid fucks that came out there showed their asses pretty much at the front door in the parking lot and got themselves booted to begin with at the beginning of the night. So the people that were inside weren't really any major problem makers. They weren't people with serious attitude problems. Now, some of them still had some attitude problems. They were just smart enough not to do it at the front door when they were coming in. But interior control is typically where you have people on the inside monitoring the crowd. And that can either be a constant direct supervision where someone stays inside the whole time, or there's multiple people who stay inside the entire time. And these could be either fixed positions where they stay in one spot and cover their sectors, or it can be kind of a roving kind of position, depending on the size of the place, right? So if it's a large enough place, you may have people who are kind of constantly walking around just watching things and making sure people aren't destroying neons. I don't even know if fucking neon signs are a thing anymore. I don't even think they are. But back in the day, the neon signs were something that, security was making sure that people weren't, fucking up or getting too close to and potentially breaking, hanging out around the pool table area, making sure, that people weren't doing anything stupid over there, setting drinks on the pool table, making sure people, don't put drinks on the pool table and ruin the lining on it and everything. So aside from checking to make sure that, the structural things, the property things inside weren't being, destroyed by just, accident, people just not paying attention or people maliciously doing things. Also responsible for just watching the people, seeing if people are over intoxicated, if they've gotten to that point where you need to point them out to the bartenders and tell them they cannot be drinking anymore, or having to basically remove that person from the bar because they're so freaking intoxicated that they're a danger to themselves and others being in there. And it can also be looking for underage drinkers. So sometimes underage people make it through the front door, either because they had a really good ID or because the managerial staff put the wrong person at the front door. And that wrong person let people in for a dollar bill. Or not a dollar bill, but like a $20 bill or a $100 bill. They took some kind of bribe and they let them in. Or, it was a young guy and a bunch of hot, cute girls coming to the door and thinking he's going to get a phone number, let them in. So, the interior control can, be the backup plan, so to speak, as far as catching underage drinkers. And then also, interior control is there to immediately respond to and stop fights. And their presence alone, just walking around, can deter fights from happening. But sometimes, spur of the moment kind of things, even with them being nearby, boom, fight pops off. But if they're inside, they can more quickly get to those fights, control things, and get people out. Interior control can also encompass security standing at a VIP door or standing at a back exit door to prevent people from propping that exit door and letting underage people in that way. So all those things, if they're done correctly and they're all, done with good intentions, a good faith effort, then there shouldn't be a whole lot of problems within that bar. The places that just don't give a shit about that, they let underage in all the time. They don't, make sure people have IDs on them at all. The security staff take bribes. They bartenders, they lie, cheat, and steal to make better tips. They sell more than just alcohol. They might sell a little bag or something like that. Places that operate kind of like that are the ones that are going to have major, major, major problems. So aside from the establishments themselves managing their own clientele, another way that establishments are managed is by their local police. Their local police or their local sheriff will, in some cases, some places make periodic stops within these places to do what's called a bar check. They go in, they walk around, make sure there's no stupid shit going on, spot check some people for their IDs, make sure they're of age, stuff like that. In some places, this occurs on a more frequent basis. In some places, it rarely occurs at all. So that alone, in and of itself, can also help set the tone for that place. If you have local police who are known to randomly drop in at any time, well, in those places, it's less likely that there's going to be a bunch of rampant bullshit going on, because you never know when they're going to come in. If they rarely ever go in there or never go in there, well, then the people are going to have no fear about the police at all, unless they come there for a specific reason, like someone called them because there's a fight. And like I said, that varies from state to state. Another form of law enforcement control, so to speak, is from ABC, Alcohol Beverage Control. If you have a very proactive ABC office or ABC officer, then they're going to be out late at night during the week and maybe come out on weekends and do spot checks at the bars. If they're doing that, then that can help keep places in line as far as a bunch of underage people being in there and whatnot. If they're not doing that, well, then places are going to be more likely to be over-serving, letting underage in, etc. Unfortunately, in a lot of places, the ABC officer is more of a Monday through Friday kind of person, and they very rarely ever go out at night during the week and barely ever go out on the weekends. These people are typically, in some places, retired peace officers. Like, they are at retirement age, so they sure as shit are not going to blend into a college bar. You got a whole sea of 20-something-year-olds, and then you got this fucker with the gray hair, wearing the khakis and a polo. He's either a fucking college professor that no one recognizes, or he's the ABC cop. That's the only fucking person that's going to be. And so if they're that easily recognizable, then they're not going to do a good job of catching things, because the bar staff are going to see them a mile away, the customers are going to see them a mile away, and there's only one or two people in an area typically, and once their face is known, everyone knows who they are. So as soon as they see that face, they're like, oh, it's ABC. Probation and parole is another law enforcement entity that can have an effect on the management of bars and nightclubs. So if you have a very proactive probation and parole office, they will come out to the bars at night and on weekends and look for people who are on probation, who are not supposed to be in bars and nightclubs. And if they catch them, they fucking snatch them. Some places, the probation and parole operate a Monday through Friday kind of schedule. They typically do not go out at night, and they typically rarely ever go out on weekends. And also, you know, some of the people that get hired into probation and parole, just they don't need to be working in that law enforcement capacity anyway. There's a lot more goofballs in the probation and parole, simply due to the fact that probation and parole falls under the Department of Corrections, the places that run prisons and stuff. And those places can have a bunch of yahoos, bunch of goofballs working there. And when you have, you know, people who work in a prison, you know, they're always stuck in a pod or something like that. If there's an opening that comes open for a probation and parole, you have lots and lots and lots of people within the prisons who apply for those positions because they're tired of working inside the prison and they want a more easier schedule. So, when people get moved into those probation and parole spots, they're coming from, some of them, not every place, but some of them are coming from the prison side, and they're already lazy to begin with, so they don't want to do a whole lot. And then the other people who, you know, haven't been working in a prison, never worked in a prison, they get hired into probation and parole. You know, they're the do-gooder people. I don't want to say do-gooder people. They're the good idea fairy kind of people. They got this naive, I'm going to go save the world, hug a thug kind of mindset. Go in there. All these people, they need a second chance kind of shit. And they end up giving way too many second chances and never do anything. Basically almost like the same kind of people who become social workers. There's no drive in them to go snatch people up when they do something wrong. They always just, you know, let it slide or give them a second chance. You know, there's no punishment or anything like that. So, and like I said, that depends on each area on whether or not there's going to be a proactive probation and parole office or officer within that area. So, if all your ducks are in a row, if you got bars that have good owners, managers, and they got good people working for them, the local police are, you know, known to randomly drop by places, ABC and probation and parole are coming out sometimes on nights and weekends here and there at random, then you can have places that there's really hardly any problems at all. And then you go into some areas and probation and parole doesn't do shit, ABC doesn't do shit, local police don't do shit, the owners and managers are fucking shitheads and their employees are shitheads. You're going to have a bunch of problems. You're going to have issues like people being beat to death in the fucking parking lot. You're going to have issues, people walking inside the bar doing a fucking hitman kill on someone where they go in and just light a motherfucker up. And when they run out the bar, they chase them down, shooting them. I mean, you're going to have issues like that. The law enforcement management side of it, even if they don't go in and do a bunch of checks and everything, in most places they can still have the ability to cite the bar. And when they cite the bar, they can cite the bar for disorderly premises, and that can impact on whether or not that bar can keep its alcohol license, be able to get it when it comes up for renewal, or cause them to immediately have it suspended or revoked, depending on the outcome of the case or the trial. If the police or the ABC are going to be more apt to do that, well, that's a pretty good slap on the hand for a place that it has to have that license to make it or break it. You know, you can't operate a bar without a liquor license, and if they slap a citation on you and that acts as a strike against you, then that's that means that the owners are going to be more likely to be like, oh shit, I can't get too many of these, or I'm going to have to close my doors. And so that motivates people to try and do things that are right. But when there's an absence of that, nobody's doing anything, well, then the bar owners don't give a shit. If there's no repercussions, then they just, it's just business as usual. They just keep letting the same stupid shit happen. So those are things that go on as far as the management of the people within places that serve alcohol that can have a determining factor on whether or not those places have problems or whether or not those places don't have any major problems. There is and I forget the name of the company. I can't remember the name of it, but it's an ID scanning company. So they have a kiosk that they can install, or you can download an app, their app, to your phone or device, and you can scan a person's ID, and it goes into a database that's maintained by this company. And you can flag those people as being VIP customers and stuff like that. Of course, it saves their information on the driver's license, so that if the bar or whatever wants to send out promotions or anything like that through the mail, it goes straight to their address. But it could also have a ban list management on there. And the cool thing about that is that company, their kiosk could network. So a bar, there's like 5 different bars that are owned by 5 different people. If all 5 of those bars ran that same kiosk thing, then if there was a troublemaker at bar 1 and they got put on the ban list, then they couldn't go into the other 4 bars, because as soon as they would have their ID scanned, it would say they were banned. And there's not a whole lot of places that do that. There are a few places that do that. I know Vegas is a place that utilizes a system like that to be able to keep troublemakers, out of the place. I was speaking to a company representative of this place, and they were saying that, I want to say they said that San Francisco did this, where San Francisco city commissioners, councilmen, whatever their terminology is down there, voted to have, I guess, ordinance pass that mandated all the bars utilize this system. And so if you go into one bar and you cause a bunch of problems, then you're shit out of luck going to any other bars in the downtown area, because you won't be able to get in. They'll deny you. And I think that is a really good practice. Unfortunately, unless there is some type of governmental oversight on that, you cannot count on all those places doing that. So you could have like 2 bars, 3 bars maybe, who would be, on board with doing something like that because they have good owners, good managers. But the other 5 bars in town may not want to do that because they don't really give a shit. They'll let anybody come in. They don't care. And with a system like that, if a system like that was mandated, then that could make it easier for probation and parole to have people entered into that database as people who are banned from bars. So if someone's on probation, the probation officer could go in, enter in the information, and have it in the system. And if someone on probation tries to go to a bar, 1, they're going to be denied, or should be denied. And then 2, that should give probation and parole an alert that someone tried to go into a bar when they're not supposed to, as a conditions of their probation or their parole. States that have laws in place that say that deadbeat parents are not supposed to be going in the bars if they owe so much in child support, that could actually be enforced. So I know here in Kentucky, if you're behind on child support, you're not supposed to be going in the bars or going to liquor stores. But there's no way to check that. There's no like online publicly viewable database that someone can go to and be like, oh, you're a deadbeat dad, you're not coming in. That just doesn't exist. So it's kind of like it's almost a pointless law in a way. I've never, at least here locally, I've never heard of that one being utilized in any way. Like, I don't think I've ever known of anyone to be charged for going into a bar when they're not supposed to, as a person who's in arrearage with child support. But for something like that, that would prevent people from being able to go in. When people are arrested and are out on bond, and part of their bond condition is they're not supposed to be out drinking and stuff like that, those people's information can be entered into such a database. And when they try to go into a bar or go to a liquor store, they can be denied. People who are habitual alcohol offenders, they can be entered into such a database and then be denied. But that would require your local government, or maybe even your state government, enacting a law that or ordinance that requires bars to utilize such a system. And it's not too far of a stretch, in my opinion, to require someone to purchase something like that, because, I mean, shit, we now require people in this country to purchase life insurance to be in good standing order. So why can't a bar be required to purchase a ID scanning system that links to a network, and they have to do that to be in good standing? I think something like that would be an extremely good option, or a good way to really bring down a lot of issues for some of these problematic places. And it would have to be stipulated that within that ordinance that there would have to be some type of repercussion for these places that would just, let somebody in without scanning their ID, a buddy kind of thing. So if those people got caught doing that, then that should be a strike against them on their liquor license, or it should be like a very hefty fine if they were caught doing that. Because if you can have people who are on probation and parole entered into a database that denies them going into a bar, people on child support, people out on bond, habitual drunks and stuff like that, if you can prevent all kinds of those people from going into bars, they get denied when they go scan their ID, that would significantly drop a lot of issues in a lot of places. It really would, in my opinion. The other thing that I think has a really big, huge determining factor is your local law enforcement. So if you have local law enforcement that's very proactive, then it's less likely there's going to be a lot of problems. If you have local law enforcement that is lazy and avoids getting into shit, then there's going to be a lot more problems. So there's a channel on YouTube called Texas Street Fights, and I can't remember what part of Texas it is. I can't remember if it's Dallas or Austin, but it's just a regular dude who goes out with a really nice high definition camera, and he's in the downtown area of whatever town this is in. It's in Texas. And I'll look it up real quick to see where it's at. But he'll walk around with this really nice camera, and he just looks for fights. And when he sees fights, he records them, and then he puts them on his YouTube page. And that's a really good channel to watch, to be able to see those classic pre-assault indicators that people do, like the picking and the looking around and touching their face and stuff. You see a lot of that in those videos. And you also see a lot of the crowd dynamics, how people get involved in things when they were not initially involved in it, how people fight in packs, basically, gang up on people, stuff like that. So it is in Austin, Texas. 7th Street Bourbon is what it says in the description. And so that's a really good channel, like I said, to see those kind of stuff. But that's also a good channel to go see what I'm talking about with law enforcement. So I have noticed that in those videos where law enforcement gets involved, it's not what I would want out of my local law enforcement. It is very relaxed approach, I guess you could say. So there'll be videos where you just see like a big fight happening on the sidewalk or out in the middle of the street, and then you hear a bunch of whistles blowing, like 4 or 5 whistles blowing, randomly, and then you see like strobe lights from flashlights being shined, and then depending on the camera angle, you may even see them. The cops are walking up the road or just walking up the sidewalk, blowing their whistles and flashing their lights while people are beating the fucking shit out of them. Like there's no sense of urgency in their steps. They're not walking fast. They're not running. They're just walking, and they're blowing their whistles and shining their lights. And then quite a few of these videos, the people will notice this and they'll break apart and walk away. And in some cases, they actually walk by the police. And the police never reach out and snatch them, never try to grab them. There's some videos where you see the police practically almost get right on top of these people, and they're still fighting, and then they break up. But yet they still don't snatch their asses up. They just let them go. And then there's some where you see them, the police will come up and they'll pepper spray a couple people, and those people will walk away, and then they will never chase after them. There's some the police go after and they snatch up and get a hold of, but there's quite a few of them where they realistically do nothing at all but blow their damn whistles and flash their flashlights, acting like a bunch of damn security guards. That's what they're acting like. They're acting like a bunch of glorified fucking security guards, blowing damn whistles and shining their flashlights. Like, you're the fucking police. You're supposed to snatch people up when they do stupid shit. Like, that is the reason why such a YouTube channel can exist, showing fights in downtown Austin on 7th Street. Because the police down there don't do shit the way they're supposed to be doing shit. My local area, back around, early 2000s, 2005, 2007, 2009, there was hardly any bullshit that went on in the downtown area. There were bars that would have crowds of about 500 people inside. Nothing major went on. I mean, there might be a couple fights here and there, but it wasn't fight after fight after fight after fight after fight. It wasn't a madhouse down there. There were a lot more proactive officers back then. Fast forward to today, and there's not a whole lot of proactive officers. There's officers who just simply don't want to get involved in things because they don't want to use a force report incident to have to deal with. They don't want to have to arrest someone who's drunk and may have become injured in a fight and then have to take their stupid ass to the ER and wait there for them to be medically cleared for incarceration. And there's some who are just timid, like they're scared. They don't want to get involved in anything. And then there's short staffing issues where there's just simply not enough police at all. And high call volumes. So there's some multifaceted things going on in there. Bulk of it is not enough police and too high of a call volume for there to be any real tangible proactiveness going on. Sprinkled into there is people who just don't want to get involved in shit because they don't want to have to go sit in the ER with someone waiting for them to be medically cleared, and some just don't want to get involved in shit because they're afraid. And that has led, in my opinion, to some of the problems in our downtown area. We have been seeing a rise in a bunch of stuff in the downtown area. And earlier this year, there was an all-out brawl in the downtown square where they surrounded the local police who were there. Surrounded them like fucking sharks circling sailors from a sunken boat. And they frantically called out on their radio that they needed backup and that they were being surrounded. How fucking embarrassing and pathetic is that? That you gotta call out for help because you're being surrounded. And that caused all on-duty law enforcement in the county to respond to that location. The campus police went there, the sheriff's office went there, the state police from like fucking Emerson County, you know, many miles away, hauling ass to get down there. And there were cops. One cop had a broke finger or broke hand or something like that. Someone got their foot fucked up. Someone had their badge ripped off of them. It was bad. And that kind of shit never would have happened back in 2007. Never would have happened. But also, to be fair, the culture was a lot different back then too. You didn't have any of this BLM bullshit, you know, fuck the police bullshit, fuck 12, ACAB. You didn't have any of that shit that was rampant back in 2007. Now, that mindset is prevalent. The war on police is more prevalent. So that has kind of effect on it to some degree, I believe. But for the most part, it is a lack of proactive policing that I think has led to some of those issues. They just don't get into people's shit like they used to back in the day. Like I said, back in the day, things were way different. People were afraid to fuck off and do stupid shit because they knew city police would snatch their ass up. Now it's not like that. Now people don't give a shit. Now we got people street racing downtown. We got people street racing downtown and crashing into parked sheriff's vehicles. Fucking totally destroying brand new 2022 model police vehicles. Brawls. People fighting the police in the downtown area. Like, this is fucking stupid. That shit never would have happened back in 2007. I can guarantee you that. So as far as the management of bars and stuff, a lot of it can be maintained by the bar itself, but a lot of the helping hand comes from local police and whether or not they're going to be proactive in doing stuff that they're supposed to be doing. I think that's about it on my thoughts on managing bars and nightclubs to make them safer. Can't think of anything else. If you like what you hear and see, go ahead and give me a like and a share. If you have not already, hit the subscribe button and stay tuned for more Monday quarterback videos. Earl Henderson, Primordial Defense. Thank you for watching.